Hello. Here we are, waiting for Kim. John Will is in the waiting room already. I don't want to really keep the man waiting, but I'm going to. So we do this little thing now where we talk about what's going on just a little bit before the show. And I guess the most interesting thing I'm discovering this week is I pulled off 4 classes in one day. That was pretty cool. Like I didn't think I could even do it. I think the most I'd done before that might have been 2. And I was always just completely destroyed. And then once I committed to doing 4, it was weird. My brain kind of shifted. I'm not doing it every day. Obviously, just once is enough for now. But when I committed to it, then I found the first class. I was fully energized after that. Like I was ready and pulling the second class towards me. Then there was a big gap between the second class and the third and fourth classes. So I really had to stay energized for that. But once I got there, again, I was ready, excited, and I found the whole thing really rewarding. So then the maximum I think we can do at our gym in one day is 5 classes. So that's my commitment. On January the 6th, I'm going to take on doing 5 classes in one day to see what that feels like. Definitely impacted my sleep, but worth doing just as an experience. I recommend. I'm calling it the Jiu-Jitsu Quintet, Jiu-Jitsu class quintet. And there's a quintet for no gi and a quintet for gi. And there's also the marathon. I've been referring to it as the marathon, the Jiu-Jitsu marathon as well. But yeah, I really recommend it. I think it's good prep for grading. I'm not grading, I don't think. I'm definitely not grading, but it's a good prep for such things as gradings. I'm just letting in Kim now. Hi, Kim. Hi, Kim. Hi, Kim.
Hello, you're recording already? Wow.
Yeah, I just started. I'm doing our bit before the bit.
Oh, yeah.
I've been talking about my marathon, which has been really fun. And we've been keeping the big man in the waiting room, which feels weird.
Are you doing that, man? No, let him in.
No, I was waiting for you.
Oh, thank you. Cheers. Thank you.
Are you all good? Are we ready to let him in?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, let him in. Yeah.
All right. And you're doing the intro today.
Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah.
All righty, let's do it.
Sure.
Yeah. Hey.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Hang on a second. I can't see anything.
Cool.
I can see.
We can see his lovely wife and son, I presume, unless that's you and you've had some amazing.
What's that? Oh, no, that's no good. Hang on. Why is that not working?
There's a bottom
That's
left,
weird.
there's a camera.
Start video.
There we go.
Yeah,
There you go. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Wow,
Thanks for joining us.
That's an incredible library you've got in the background there, man. That's awesome.
That's a bunch of shit. Makes me look smarter than what I actually am. It's just bullshit. It's green screen. It's not real.
Oh, John, we've already started recording. I don't know. Do you want us to take that out or leave that in?
No.
Nah. I'm too old to care. Look at my wife. Check this out. Stand by. Come here. Turn around. She's got cute little skimpy shorts with her new black belt. Come on. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Congratulations.
Awesome. So good.
Actually, while you're both here, I'm really interested to know if it's changed the dynamics of domestic disputes at home. Are you now allowed like toe holds and knee bars and those sorts of things, reaping?
I've never slept with a black belt before. Professor Melissa.
I love it.
It's still only been 24 hours though, yeah. So maybe there might be another answer to that question in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, right. We're too tired.
All right, shall we kick this off because we've only got 40 minutes.
If your wife would love to join, she's very welcome to join the podcast as well. Like it's just up to you.
She'll might pop her head in every now.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, Kim, you should do the intro with us.
Okay, I'll do it. Welcome to the first Roll or Die episode for 2022. Today, listeners, you are in for a treat. We have probably the forefather of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Australia. I think it's fair to say many of our listeners would probably not be doing Jiu-Jitsu if not for the actions of this man, Professor John Will. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, you don't have to call me Professor, please. But thank you. John's fine. But,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
thank you very much for having me on.
Wow.
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you. We're starting the year off with a bang. So we've had a couple of OGs on, quite a few OGs, but you are probably the OG of Australian Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah. So obviously
Yeah,
your wife became a black belt just yesterday, which is well, like this is going to be aired in the future. But at the time of recording this, it was literally yesterday. What was that whole experience like? Like, talk us through that.
It was good. She started, we've been together 32 years, married for 24. See, I can do the numbers.
Wow, that's pretty good. That's because you read all those books, man. That's what it is. Those books taught you.
That's right. So she's been training for 32 and a bit years. But, we had a son, so there's time off for that because she had to, put nappies on him and feed him and school and, all of that. But even during that time, Melissa was still, my wife's name is Melissa. Mm-hmm. She was still teaching kids classes and just doing that. So she had a kind of a low key, she kept her hand in doing that kind of stuff, but her own training, like for herself, went on the side for a bit. And it has a couple of times over the years with various injuries and different things. But yeah, 32 years is long enough, I would say. Yeah. So now she's in there with a black belt. So yeah, it was really good. And also I'm a little bit harder on my family. I guess most people are, especially in the BJJ community. Because most of us anyway, tend to, it's the other killer. Most of the people in the BJJ community are pretty on board with trying to either maintain the original standards or even improve on them. So we don't want it to go the way of, other martial arts. So I think in the BJJ community, as far as the ones I know, other guys that I've known for a long time, and their wives have got black belts. Chris Howder would be an example. Chris Howder is one of the other first dozen non-Brazilian black belts. His wife is also named Melissa. She's a black belt. But again, he was really hard on that. He wasn't going to give her that rank until she was really good. So we want to do that. So that's kind of the tendency.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it was great. It was a great night. She's really stoked. So, and it was on our anniversary.
Beautiful.
As well, so.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it kind of just worked out, right? It was just nice.
That is cool. What a present.
John, you touched on, in case some of our listeners don't know, you are one of, I think it's called the Dirty Dozen, one of the first 12 non-Brazilians to achieve a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So can you tell us a little bit about your beginnings, how you discovered Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, what happened, how it came to Australia?
I'm sure people have heard this story thousands of times, but I'll give you a really short version of it.
Tell it a bit differently too. Try and tell it differently. I challenge you to that.
Oh my God. How can you tell the truth differently? I'm not trying. Well, I'll see if I can find something in my brain. But I left school. I went overseas, almost immediately after high school, and started training throughout Southeast Asia, all through Indonesia and Thailand and India, wrestled in India, kickboxing Thailand, Silat Indonesia, karate in Japan. I was just doing that full time, trying to do the little odd jobs to pay for it. A lot of adventures in that space. And then I eventually I started the magazine called Blitz Magazine, which was an Australian martial arts magazine. And I started that magazine for an unusual reason. It's because I wrote an article about cross-training back in the mid-'80s. And cross-training between different martial arts styles back in the mid-'80s was not something that you did. It was seen as you just didn't do it. You picked a style and you stuck with it. So I wrote an article about cross-training, and I put it in the then Australian martial arts magazine called Australasian Fighting Arts, and they published my article. And then some of these heavy hitters, so-called heavy hitters, like guys who were well known in the Australian martial arts community, wrote in and just pounded the crap out of my article. Like, what the hell would this kid know? Cross-training just means you don't know what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't take that. So I immediately wanted to fight them both. But okay, I got a story. But anyway, but to stick with the story at the moment, I wrote a reply to their reply, which the editor of that magazine, Australasian Fighting Arts, refused to publish. And I said, that's fucking that is bullshit. Like, that is you're not publishing my reply. So my reaction was to go down to the local print house in Geelong and say, how much to make a magazine? So I can reply.
Oh my God.
And they said
$10,000. Fuck yes.
And I just went out there with the idea I'm going to destroy this other magazine and those two guys and their mothers and dogs and cats. A little bit of an overreactor.
Yeah.
So I did that, and it took me precisely 10 issues to wipe them off the face of the earth. And then I lost interest in the magazine and sold it. So anyway, how did I get into Bjj? When I had that magazine, I wrote an article. I was doing, always on the lookout for little news stories and things. And I found an article about a Brazilian guy that was visiting Australia, challenged anyone to a fight for $50,000. This is back in the mid 80s. No one had 50 cents, let alone 50,000. So I wrote that article, and of course there were no takers, but that got me thinking, who is this guy? And then I followed it up and hunted down, trying to trace him and what he was about. He was a guy called Marcelo Bering, who was, Hickson Gracie's top black belt.
I was going to say, that sounds like Hickson Gracie. I would have guessed Hickson Gracie.
It was Hickson Gracie's top black belt, who was out here surfing at Bells Beach, and just put it out there. And I ended up sharing, had New Year's dinner in Copacabana. I think it was in Copacabana in Brazil, in the penthouse of Copacabana, on a building there, which was owned by the Machado's parents. They're all cousins. They're all together. And I was there for New Year's Eve party, either Christmas or New Year's Eve. I can't quite remember. And Marcelo was there. So they're all quite tight. But anyway, that's how I found Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I trying to track him down. And I ended up in Los Angeles, did some lessons with Jorge and Gracie in his garage, and met Higan Machado, who said, don't train here, go to Brazil where the real stuff is. And I went to Brazil, and that's how it all started.
Wow. And how long did you spend in Brazil in that first kind of section?
First 3 weeks, just 3 weeks, enough to be beaten up by, a purple belt girl.
Yeah.
And realized that, pardon?
How old were you around that time?
I think I must have been 30 years of age.
Okay.
And I was, I considered myself probably harder and tougher than I was.
Yeah.
And because I trained a lot, and I'd done a lot of fights. Like I'd fought in the street, because I was not in the street in my hometown, but in Asia. And the reason I'd done a fair few fights was not because I was looking for fights, but I was doing some work. I was doing some work for the police over there in a undercover capacity, because I was three things. I was a white guy that could speak Indonesian, that could, to what extent I could look after myself. So they hired me. They got me to be the buy up, do a lot of drug buys and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And then we'd set people up and bust them. And then we expanded out into finding guys that would be running girls, like prostitution rackets and stuff. So we would go in there and smash them, steal their money and stuff, and give it back to the girls and send them home.
Oh, wow. You're a good Samaritan, brother. Who knows?
I was into that because I have a very, very high protective index. That's what gets me going. Like if I see someone being abused, or I get triggered. So I was in my lane and I was going off. And
it's therapy.
So that's, it was. So that was that gave me some experience. When I say fighting, I was starting fights, I was doing that kind of thing. And that's how it all becomes. So when I went to Brazil, so I thought I'll get back on track. So I thought I was, competent, pretty hands-on. But then this girl got me on the ground, and chewed me up and choked me out. And I went, what the hell? I had a mental breakdown. And I thought, I better learn something here, and that's how it started.
That's amazing.
And how did that go, John, in terms of, so you had the 3 weeks in Brazil and then you came back to Australia, and how did you continue to learn? How did you continue to evolve your jiu-jitsu in that time?
Okay, so a few things. There was always, so one thing you got to remember is how I started, or take into context, is how I started my martial arts training. I mean, I started doing taekwondo and karate and wrestling here. So I had coaching, but from the age of 18 onwards, I wasn't like, I went to places and I took self-responsibility for my own learning. So I'm in a country where I don't speak the language. So I became quite good at being in a class, identifying who's the best one here, and then mimicking them and modeling them, because I don't know what they're saying. They're talking Thai. So I just did that. And we all, right, we all have that capacity, right? We learned our first language. We rode a bike with very little or no instruction. So people have the ability to, I think everyone to a degree is an autodidact. They take care of they're able to teach themselves. And so I had done that for 8 years. So I was reasonably good at, I would say pretty good at it. So therefore, when I went to Brazil, again, I don't need a good coach. Just stick me in a room with someone who can do the thing and I'll figure it out myself. So I became like that. So that was easy for me then to take short trips, download a whole lot of information, take copious amounts of notes. Then I would come back home and I would work on it for 6 months. Which some people saw that as a disadvantage. Oh, you poor thing, you're out in Australia. We got our coach every day. It did not turn out to be a disadvantage. It turned out to be an advantage, because now I've only got 20 things to work on. I'm going to work the shit out of them. I'm going to drill down. I'm going to figure out how it all works. So when I go back, I was at least as good as the guys who were training every day. Wow. And in some ways I was better because I was more analytical. I was thinking about it. So I don't see my isolation as being a negative. I see it as a positive. And I've always been that way. So, I used to, it's a terrible thing to say about your coach, but I had a thing that I came to with my coach. My first rule was ignore my coach at all times. Like, wow. That was my first rule, meaning look at what he does. Do not listen to what he's saying. No. Because they are two different things, and you'll see a lot of people doing that at a very high level, golf, gymnastics, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm sure if you get on the golf links with Tiger Woods, who is a cheater, but just
had to throw that in there. But he's damn good at golf. And that's why you don't listen to what he says. You just look at what he does and you copy his golf swing, because otherwise you're going to end up in some bar that you don't want to be in. Like,
end up in a bar. So anyway, but I'm sure that guys like him, and I've seen this in the martial arts field, if you ask them how you do that low single, how do you do that fireman's carry, whatever it is, if you ask them, they will tell you the words that come out of their mouth very rarely matches what they're doing, because the words that come out of their mouth are usually descriptive of their first iteration of it. Like they're the same words that they heard 15 years ago. Yeah. But in that 15-year interim, they have made, 10 little adjustments, but they have neglected to upgrade their fucking notes in their head. Wow. So what you hear out of their mouth is not matching all the little tiny improvements they make. So I've realized this And yeah, and so I just look at what they do, and then I analyze it myself, and I do that rather than listening to what they say.
That's genius.
And of course, as a professional teacher myself, I am constantly doing the opposite. I'm trying to continually upgrade my notes, my teaching notes, and what I'm going to say based on my current understanding and experience of the technique.
Wow.
You understand? So that's really quite.
So you don't tell your students to ignore you, basically. You say, you should ignore me if I'm not upgrading my words around this, my language, but you shouldn't ignore me if I'm putting effort into upgrading my language around this and I'm evolving that.
Exactly. And I do that every day. That's my hobby. Like every day today, this morning, I made notes.
Yeah.
I taught a private lesson to a black belt this morning, you know, and I know what I taught him. I mean, I've taught him before a stack of times, but I still debriefed myself for 5 minutes after the lesson, just in case I explained something, and I did. This morning was one of those times where I just said it a way that made him go, "Oh shit, right?" And I went, "Oh, wow, that's cool, right?" So I was talking about, you know, the Philly shell, you know, the Philly shell for boxing, you know, when the way Mayweather fights. So if you want to pummel, people pummel with their hands, which I disagree with. I think most of the time in BJJ you're tight, you've got to pummel with your elbows. So if I crash into you and I hit you with a Philly shell, I'll then pummel and otherwise if I hit you, I try to pummel. It's 50-50 as to who gets the underhook.
Yeah.
But if I hit you with my shell when you're trying to knock my head off, then I go here, I can pummel with my elbow. So elbow pummel.
And you're still protected. Everything's still protected while you're pummeling as well.
Yeah. But you're pummeling with your elbow, he can't get an underhook.
Nice.
Wow.
So, I mean, and this guy was a boxer, so he understands that idea. So I just talked about the Philly shell, and then I said, well, there are other ways you do that. When they're passing side control, instead of trying to get your underhook like that, let them land on top of that, and then you get it for free because they can't get an underhook on you, and you get it underhook for free. And then I gave him 3 or 4 other examples. So when I went to make my notes afterwards, I just wrote Philly shell, worth talking about if you're talking about getting underhooks and pummeling, blah, blah, blah. So I do that every day.
Wow.
For 40 years or whatever the fuck. So that helps me try to be current, you know, with what's coming, congruent. It helps me be congruent with what's coming out of my mouth and what I'm trying to do.
And John, in your lessons, we've had one of your former students on, Cam Rowe, and he learned a lot from you about how to run classes. And he explained to us that when you do a seminar or take a class, that you like to have everyone on the same side of the room. Can you give us your explanation of that? How you do that?
Yeah, well, apart from knowledge, like you've got a good coach should have, the first thing is they've got to have a good knowledge base. Like if I ask a professor of history, you know, imagine this, there's a professor of history, and I say, well, tell me a little bit, I've got this question about Chinese history. And he goes, whoa, I don't do that. I just do English history. That guy's not a professor. He's full of shit. Because if you're a professor of history, you should know a little bit about every kind of history, and then maybe a lot about one, you know, your specialty, right? And I think that's kind of like what a black belt should be. They should have a very broad base. You should not be able to catch them out. You should be able to say, just tell me 4 things about crucifix or about anything that you can think of, and they should have that information at their fingertips. If they can't, it's a fail. And then they should know a whole lot about, you know, a couple of subjects, right? So I'm sorry, I've gone off topic. So
no, not at all.
There should be like, there's got to be a basic minimum standard of subject matter, understanding your subject matter. And you've got to have some kind of personality, something ideally to be able to communicate to people. So there's all those things, but all that aside, there are just basic coaching, like mechanical things that I think what I would call coaching 101. And one of them is don't ignore half your students. So that's why they're in front of me instead of around me. Yeah. Unless I'm on one of those car pivoting fucking platforms, you know, that spin around. So there's just things you've got to do. Put people in front of you. Don't illustrate the whole technique and then go do it. Like this is not how anything else happens in the world. You know, someone comes to your class, you don't go omoplata when they're starting out. No one opens up the engineering book at a random page and go, today, your first day engineering school, we're going to do page 438. No one does that except in the martial arts world, which is inhabited by morons. So, I mean, not you. but and that's a result of a lot of people having a hobby, right? Why I say that is a lot of people have a hobby, martial arts, let's say. They wake up one day and realize there's no other way they can make a living in the world. And it occurs to them, I can monetize my hobby. So in other words, you're getting a bunch of losers, people that can't make anything work anyway. And they go, as an act of desperation, I'll monetize my hobby. And there they are populating the landscape. So it's not their fault. It's just, that's why I think you get so many people that just make you shake your head. Yeah. It's not like a whole bunch of people that chose to do engineering and went to engineering school and became engineers. That's not happening in the martial arts community. So you're getting people that don't appreciate that there are things like teaching 101, like basic mechanical things that you should do to try and improve, you know, and then other things that go with that. Like, you know, whatever technique it is, like if you were teaching me a recipe, you wouldn't tell me all about it. Oh, here's the worst. You wouldn't make the cake and go, make that. You would show me the ingredients. You would tell me there's some kind of order.
Maybe a picture of the cake as well.
Right, a picture of the cake. And then you would guide me step by step through it until I can do it.
Yeah.
And that you've got to do the same thing when you're teaching, you know, lasso spin under to omoplata or something like that. You can't just go blah. Yeah. So there's lots of mat things. It's not just the circle of people. It's just the whole design of how you go about getting something that's in your head out of that into someone else's head. That is a pretty tricky process. And I think it deserves thought and it deserves attention because people are trading their life, 2 hours of their life to spend it with us. So let's think about that. Like, holy shit, really? You're going to swap 2 hours of your life? I better do my share of work here to make sure that the bargain is fair.
It really strikes me like with jiu-jitsu, there's kind of obviously more than two schools, but there's two kind of major schools. There's like a structured curriculum type, and then there's a sink or swim type of training. And one of the things which really has been getting my attention lately, just noticing it in my own journey, is grading systems. They're so diverse. Like every coach's relationship to belts and stripes. Like I find stripes disempowering for me, right? Because like I have never gotten stripes one at a time. Even across multiple coaches, they're two at a time, and it's like they forget to give me the stripes or whatever. But here I am going, maybe I'm not worthy. Am I not trying hard enough? Am I not? And maybe I'm flying under the radar. But there's all of these. I'm in a world, right? I'm in a world of pain, and then it's later on. It's like I had the whole story wrong anyway. You know, just like I feel like jiu-jitsu was invented. Then belts are invented, and then they come up with stripes, but there's no real correlation between stripes and the belts in some coaches' minds. Some coaches don't even do stripes. You know, I feel like there's room for cleaning some of that stuff up. What are your thoughts?
I think what I think about stripes as opposed to the color change of the belt, which when I started there was no stripes. It's just right. But I have a very clear idea on what I think the stripes are for, and they're not for, say you were my student, they're not for you.
Right.
They're for me. So I can look at you one day on the mat, you being one of 250 students, and go, oh shit, he's got 4 stripes on his belt. That means his next rank is brown belt. What does he need? So it triggers me to go, shit, what's missing? And how can I fix it?
Wow.
So they're a memory for me. It's a way of, because if you're looking at 30 blue belts, you know, it's hard for me anyway to keep track of who should be ready for purple, you know, because it's just all blue belts. So the stripes tell me that I should look more closely at the ones with 4 stripes in preparing them for brown than I should look at the ones with 1 stripe.
That's amazing.
That's the only thing that matters.
That's amazing. Love it.
And John, what do you think of the future of the Ghee? I mean, there's a lot of talk now. I mean, Anton mentioned about 2 schools. There definitely is like a new school of jiu-jitsu, and a lot of people are against the idea of ever training in the Ghee. What do you think about that?
I think it's important to train in a Ghee. Well, it depends on what you want to do. Yeah, that's a better answer. So if you're just about kicking doors in and shooting people, but you get tackled to the ground halfway through, what you don't need to do guard passing, and you don't need to do cross lapel chokes. So you need to do other things. So because that person who might be a special operator or something like that, are very different from someone who wants to do sport, which is very different than someone who wants to do self-defense, which is very different than someone who's just there for socialization and health and fitness, which is, you know, perfectly awesome. So it just depends on what you want. So if you want to be well-rounded, right, then you need to do Ghee and no Ghee. But, you know, all those people who say something like, oh, no, that's bullshit. We just want to do no Ghee. When you go, well, why don't you want to do the Ghee? Oh, because no one wears Ghees in fights. Oh, so you're doing fighting. So are you punching each other in the head every night? Oh, no. What the fuck then? So you're being inconsistent, right? So it depends, right, on what you want. I think there are things you're going to learn with a Ghee that you'll never learn with no Ghee. I mean, all the people who got good at no Ghee, like Eddie Bravo and stuff, people would forget they spent 10 years in a Ghee, learning the mechanics and learning all these things that they would never have learnt with no Ghee. So if you just go no Ghee, that's reductionist, meaning you're not adding to the amount of techniques, you're reducing the amount of techniques you need to survive in that environment. Now, let's add a knife. It reduces again. You're not doing deep half guard. You're right, death, right? So it just depends on what you want. So in my school, it's not about what I want. It's about it's about what the students want. Now, what do they want? I'll tell you a whole range of things. Some people just love being there, you know, with an extended family, and they love the socialization and they get awesome. Some people are saying they're there to learn self-defense. That's okay, but no one's learning self-defense for 20 years and not getting into fights, because at some point they'll work out, what am I fucking doing? I'm getting more injuries trained for 20 years. I would have just been better off taking the fucking beating. So a lot of people are not clear in their own mind why they're there.
Yeah.
Because, and the reason for that is if you say, why are you here? They spurt out the answer that was correct when they started. But now you're 20 years in, your reasons have changed. The same as if you get married, what attracted you to the girl or guy is not what keeps you there for 32 years. It's right. So the starting reasons are not your finishing reasons. And it's the same thing with Bjj. So I think it's too narrow to say just Ghee or just no Ghee, so I try to do a little bit of everything. Like the other night quite often we start with gloves on, boxing gloves on, and you start whacking away at my head as randomly as you can, and I got to get in there and clinch you and then do BJJ.
That's so cool.
Right. So I'm catering for sport. You know, I've got people that can compete in the world level, and then there's people that are bouncing on the doors, and then there's people who are just making friends. You know, and I'm trying to give something to everybody.
So your marriage with BJJ has been what, 40 years? Did you say that? Is it not your marriage, but your marriage to the art of BJJ? 40 years.
I started in 1986, so whatever that is.
Hey Google,
35.
how many years ago was 1986?
I think it's 35. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of years. Yeah. So, what now lights you up? As you say, what you started BJJ for, different to what it is now. What lights you up about BJJ nowadays?
The really simple things. I like things that are probably very boring for most people. I like to become clearer on my notes, like on the organization of BJJ, like a topic. If you name a topic, I've got like, oh, you should do that first, not that. And then second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So I like trying to continually tweak the organization of it all.
That excites me, man. You've got me. You struck me right at a place that my Virgo heart loves, man. That's awesome.
I like that. And then, you know, of course I can test that because I'm teaching. So I can test the hypothesis and not just, you know, it's not just self-indulgent. I'm doing that. And I like solving particular problems, you know, which is, you know, lots of different, I've done a lot of work with, you know, military and law enforcement and all different kinds of organizations and stuff like that. And they have certain particular issues, and I like to identify them, come up with a solution, design a training model for that solution, and then deliver that to their trainers. So I like doing things like that because I feel like I'm contributing above and beyond just the martial arts scene
and the civilians.
So I like to do that as well.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. We're getting really close to the end of time here. So, John, I don't know if you've got any parting words for any of our listeners, anyone that, you know, is maybe struggling with jiu-jitsu. It is a really hard journey. It is a really long road. Any words of wisdom that you could offer to keep people on the path?
Especially about longevity. How the hell have you done this for so long?
Well, wherever you are is where you need to be. So if you're underneath side control and you're not getting out, that's exactly precisely where you need to be. It's not where you want to be, it's where you need to be. Because you can take that off the mat and work it into your life as well. So, which is important to me, finding lots of ways to do that, transpose what we learn on the mat. How can I make that work in my life? Because if I can't, I don't get it. I'm not understanding it well enough if I can't do it everywhere. Wow. So, because people have moments of drama, like they're flat, they're not getting anywhere there, they're getting squished, they're smashed. Well, you need to spend more time precisely there until that goes away. So you embrace it instead of trying to find ways to avoid it.
Wow.
And that's something that'll get people through, you know, because when you fix it, that problem won't come back as much. So that was your best time to embrace it, right? So if you're stuck underneath, you know, if you're a 55-kilo girl that gets on the mat with a bunch of wrestlers with cauliflower ears, and that's your first experience of BJJ, then you might be underneath for 4 years. And it's no good complaining about it because first of all, no one's listening. And second of all, that is precisely where you need to be until you are no longer there. Because later on, when you're the person on top, then you would have to decide to go underneath to practice that. And people don't tend to do that. They don't tend to willingly put themselves in the shit, right? You can, of course, but they don't tend to. So wherever you are, just embrace it, and because that you're learning there. And I think that's pretty helpful for people.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Wow.
Awesome. That's probably a beautiful place to finish up. I think, as I said, John, you are probably our version of Jiu-Jitsu royalty here in Australia. So thank you so much for taking the time. I don't know how we've taken 90 something episodes to get you on. You should have been on way earlier, but by now we've polished up. You know, we're hopefully a little bit better than what we were at the beginning of our podcast journey. But thank you once again for taking the time. Anton, did you have any other
Just thank
words to say?
Thank you. I learned so much from that interaction. And,
pleasure. Anytime. Come with the hard questions.
Yeah.
We'll do it another time, and give me some hard ones.
Yeah, don't be a stranger. Come back on someday. That'd be great. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, of course.
We often have repeat guests. So if you could share this with your social medias, that would really help grow our audience. We're a little podcast, but I think we're getting bigger and getting more and more people on the streets telling me that they're hearing us and enjoying us. So let's keep spreading the love, and look forward to a great year in 2022.
Yeah,
let's do it.
No worries.
Awesome.
Thank you.
you.
Just flick me a link when it's done, and I'll.
Will do.
Will do.
See ya.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.